What's it like running a fully digitally recallable studio? To be honest, it is heaven. And I've come from a kind of studio environment that's been non-digitally recallable for, I don't know, let's say 15, 20 years. It's always been non-digitally recallable. That's where I've come from. And I had an SSL mixer and EQs, compressors, all this modular sort of X-Rack setup in the past, which had Total Recall. Now, Total Recall's cool, and I've got an AWS as well, which has Total Recall, and this is good. It's better than not having recall at all. The problem with Total Recall is you've still manually got to kind of start moving everything around. So there's there's a there's a level of manual. You've got to do things manually, and the way I look at this is I make these sorts of investments into my studio so that I can continue to give my clients the most affordable service possible. Because if I can save as much time as possible, now when recalling a console, recalling, like I've got 300 channels, I think it is, of analog processing in it. I think it's above 300 channels. Now, if I had to recall all of those channels, that's going to take me an hour, easy. If I had to recall every single one of those channels. And look, here's the thing is, if I didn't have that digitally recallable setup of like 300 channels, bang, instant recall. If I didn't have that, I'd mix in a box, because I'm not putting up with that. I'm not, there's no way I'm going to spend an hour per mix setting up analog processing, because ultimately that cost, time is money, gets passed on to the client. So the client has to pay for that hour of setup time. So this is why I think making these sorts of investments into your studio and being able to kind of go, right, everything's digitally recallable. And I'll be honest, it's the best choice I ever made, because the thing for me is, I know myself coming out the box and using analog summing, using analog EQs, analog compressors, analog reverb, all these different analog processes gives me a better sound and a more unique sound. And staying in the box, the problem you have with staying in a box is, if I stay in the box, it's convenient, but in my opinion, I get a lesser sound. So I'm valuing convenience over my clients getting a better sound. Whereas this way, using digitally recallable gear, I'm able to give the clients the best sound I could possibly give them, but also have all the benefits of working in the box with plugins, because that plugin that's in the box will recall all the gear. There's lots of reasons why digitally recallable gear is, in my opinion, is the future. That's how the industry will end up going, because I don't think, like, I'll be, for me personally, I won't be buying another piece of equipment that doesn't have digital recall. I'm just not going to do it, because that would be going backwards. So I think in the future, a lot of people are going to share my opinion on that, and they're only going to buy digitally recallable stuff. That's why companies like Wes Audio are skyrocketing. They're doing brilliant. And then you've got companies who aren't doing so well, who aren't embracing this digital recall, let's say, revolution. So when it comes to digitally recallable gear, what I have is I can sit in my sweet spot right here, sitting here mixing. I then do not ever have to reach out the sweet spot. Like, I've got gear that's all the way down here. I've got gear that's at the back of the room over there. I can control it all from here. I've got my S4 over here, which I can control it via the controllers, or I can use a mouse to control it on the plugin. The key benefits here are I'm continuously staying in that sweet spot and never moving out of the sweet spot, which is brilliant, because I'm standing up and walking to the back of the room to change the EQ and then coming back and going, is that right? Oh, no, I'll go back, and that doesn't make sense. I go into some of these studios And I see studios online where the gear's behind them, and you see engineers turning round to change the settings on the gear, and they're almost listening with the speakers behind them like that. To me, it doesn't make sense. I want to be sat like this with the gear in front of me, around me, if I'm going to touch it. And this is the thing with all digitally recallable gear, is it doesn't matter where it is in the room. I could have all this gear in a machine room, right, with a AC blowing into it so it doesn't get too hot, and control it all from here. And I could literally just have this console and the S4 sitting in here, and I'd then have all the gear outside in the machine room. I don't want that, because I want the gear to be on show. So that's one major benefit of having digitally recallable gear. The other thing is when you're using a plugin, so you use the plugin, and that will do the control, and it will recall the gear exactly as it was. Now, one thing quickly to bear in mind is the recall on this. My SSL console is, I believe, within 1/10 of a dB it will recall. And I think I read somewhere the other day that Wes Audio was within 0.025 dB of in terms of bang on accurate. And those tiny differences are, you can't hear that. I challenge anyone to hear 0.1/10 of a dB. You can't hear it. So the recall's bang on accurate. But with the plugin, what's good about the plugin is you have, if you take into account, you've got a piece of equipment that's non-digitally recallable, and then you've got the same piece of equipment with digital recall and a plugin to accompany it. Now, if we look at something like, I don't know, let's say the Tube EQ, Wes Audio Tube EQ. That, if it didn't have digital recall, it's a brilliant EQ, and you can access every feature from the front of it, and same with the plugin. But by adding the plugin, having the plugin, you obviously get the digital recall with it, but also what you get is you have the ability to see a frequency analyzer as well. You've got every feature is on that EQ particularly is in the on the hardware. So it's not like, oh, there's hidden features in the plugin. Now there are on some. Like I had the Better Maker Valve Portex style EQ, like a passive EQ, and that had in the plugin you could access the filter. I couldn't ever find a way of accessing the filter from the hardware. So the one thing that you get with the plugin is you add, there's visual elements that are added, and there's sometimes other features that are within the plugin but aren't on the hardware. That's not often the case, but sometimes that's the case. With the added features though, things like compressors having a visual readout, so you can see how much dynamic range, you can see how much gain reduction there is, so you can see all these different things. With a lot of the Wes Audio stuff, with saturation mode, you can see the saturation, so you can see all these different things with the plugin, which you don't get if you're just using a piece of hardware. So if you like all those visual aids, that's really good. Same with filters. The one thing with the Wes Audio EQs, for instance, is you can use it in both modes. So you can use it looking like the hardware, or you can use it and it looks like a FabFilter, for instance, with different nodes, and you're more, some people will be more familiar with looking at that. Now, what I found in that regards is sometimes I want to use it in its standard kind of how it looks on the hardware, because I get more of a feel for what I'm doing. But sometimes if I want to be surgical, I can very much turn it into this sort of, let's say, FabFilter looking mode, which is a more modern mode, and I think they call it modern, and look at it like that, and I can be a little bit more detailed in some ways. The other thing that you have with digitally recallable gear is you've got automation, so you can run any automation. If you want the high frequency to turn up the gain, or turn the frequency lower at a certain point, you can automate all of that. and it will change all the gear. The gear will change. Now, the one thing to bear in mind with this is because it's analog, some gear, not all gear, but some gear have steps. So things like the frequency on the West Audio Tube EQ, you're going, let's say, from 2K to 2.8K. So you get that step. It's not like a digital thing where you're going from 2K sweeping to 2.8K. You're going from 2K bang 2.8K. So you will get a jump, and that's not too bad. It's not too bad with the gain, because you can have it at 0.08 dB steps. Whereas that's another one that's really beneficial with digitally recordable gear, is the steps are minuscule. Sometimes 0.08 dB steps. That's really small steps of gain. Whereas normally with a mastering EQ, you'd have minimum 0.25 dB, which is a quarter of a dB, or you would have half a dB, 0.5 dB steps. So when it comes to digitally recordable gear, there's so many beneficial things that come with the territory. Now, there's the one thing I would recommend doing is, if you do go down this route of digital recall gear, is get yourself a really good hub. Spend money on a hub that's really good, powered hub. If you get a powered hub, connect everything to it, and it will work flawless. If you've got one of these hubs that are kind of bus powered off the computer, they do work, but once you start plugging lots of gear into it, I've found in the past that some of them will drop out and you'll have to kind of switch them on and off, and then they'll connect. Whereas if you get a powered hub, it's just like you turn everything on, bang. Now, in terms of recall, what is amazing about digitally recordable gear is that when it comes to jumping from session to session, like I can move from one session to another. And as I move from session to session, I literally open the session and I open my SSL Oracle O-Control software, select the console snapshot, load it up, and bang, there I am, back exactly where I was. And I think if you were to compare the audio before where you left it and then where you recalled it, it's going to be pretty much bang on accurate. And there's no audible difference. Now, I've tested audible differences. I haven't actually ever tested whether it nulls, because I very much doubt it would null. There'll be some very, very tiny differences, but audible differences that you go, oh, something's different there, none. You will never hear a difference yourself. You'll never actually hear that difference. Now, if you open that session, you're back where you left off. And this is the thing, and this is what I started this video with saying, is that is worth its weight in gold. And the reason that's worth its weight in gold is because I can jump from one session. If a client tells me, oh, I need a revision, no problem. Bang, open, do the revision, send it back off. You know, otherwise, if this console's 48 channels, 48 EQ, 48 compressors, mix bus as well. If I'm using that, and I'm using all those channels, to recall that, it's going to take me a good hour and the rest to recall everything. And it's not logical, and it doesn't work in today's modern industry. I've got friends who have big, nice SSL Oracle Origin consoles, lovely big Oracle Origin console. And the problem they have is that when they jump from session to session, it takes them an hour to set back up, and they're struggling in a way, because they're trying to do the similar service that I'm doing in regards to like an online service, and they're just like, I can't keep offering revisions. I have to charge £100 per revision, and it's like, well, yeah, I get it, and I understand that, because it's taking you an hour to set it all back up, and then another, maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes to do the revision, print it off, send it off, maybe another half an hour, you know, so it's taking you an hour and a half to do that revision. Whereas me, I can go, yeah, cool, I can include 3 revisions into the service, and then Every revision after that is only charged at £10 because it's a very simple process for me to make a revision. If someone says to me, "Oh, Paul, can you make the vocals 1 dB louder?" No problem. Bang, open it up, vocal 1 dB louder, record, send it back off. It doesn't take long. It's maybe a process of from the whole process, 20 minutes, if that. And then I can just charge someone here. This is a reasonable price for me to make that revision for you. No problem. It just covers a little bit of my time. It doesn't even cover the time, to be honest, but it's just a small price. Whereas someone who has an Origin console or an AWS not too bad, but because that's got Total Recall, that's going to take you maybe 10, 15 minutes to set up the console. Whereas the Oracle is honestly, it's 5 seconds. Hit a button and bang. So yeah, I mean, look, this is why I use all this digitally recordable gear. I would, if you're going down this route of adding hardware into your studio, I would 100% recommend go down the route of adding digitally recallable gear. Like me personally, I won't be adding anything to this studio that's not digitally recallable. I've got 2 pieces of gear in here. I've got the Hendy Amps Michelangelo EQ, and I've got the Hum Audio Lau. Now, the 2 of those are in here. The Hendy Amps is because we designed this version, so we have I have a part to play in the production of it, which is why we've got these in both of our studio. But also as well is that has such a unique sound, and I've got a special way of working with it. And that as well is I don't use that in the mix, and I won't use anything that's non-digitally recallable in the mix. I'll use that in the master. That will go in the master all day, every day, and I'll recall that quite easily. Now the Hum Audio Lau, the settings don't change too much because it is just a limiter. It's just the release times that change, so that's easy enough to recall. And bear in mind, these are all gear that's used in mastering. I would never be using those in mixing because I want that instant bang recall, and that's what I've got in here. 300 odd channels that instantly recall. Now tell me that every person who's watched this far into the video cannot agree that that is what we want as engineers. We want those sessions to load like we're working in the box, but we want that superior sound of working out the box. So yeah, that's what you get with digital recall.